I started homeschooling my son this past fall, and a lot of people had a lot of different reactions. I had everything from, the normal, he's not gonna have any friends, he's not gonna, you're gonna be overwhelmed. How are you gonna teach things you don't know? What are you gonna do when he gets into math you don't understand? Um, when are you coming back? Are you just doing this for a little while? Like all these all these things. And I admit I started with like, we're going to check it out. We're going to try it for a year, see if we like it. If we like it, we're going to keep going. Cause obviously I'm not going to make my son do something he doesn't enjoy doing um, in that capacity. So the funny thing is though, is that I'm actually a homeschool teacher. So I have my degree in history. And when he was a baby, I needed to work, but I was also, stay-at-home mom. I had a baby. So I started working teaching English as a second language online through a company that had things all over the world. And so I could teach in like the middle of the night. I could teach from like 10 o'clock at night to like, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Thankfully, my kid liked to sleep, so he would sleep in. And at the time, we had lived with my dad. My dad was sick at the time, so we were living with him. And so if my son did wake up, my dad could, go in and lay down with him and it was fine. And that was great until my father passed away, and then I couldn't do that anymore because if he woke up in the middle of the night, which he did a lot more frequently now that Papa had died, and he was missing him. And so I had to leave that job and I took on my dad's company. It was a whole other thing. And I used to love to teach my son when he was little. We do when my dad's job that I took over, he sold to contractors and we would drive around delivering um the soaps that he would sell to the whatever. And the point is we would do a lot of driving. And so my 2-year-old would be in the back seat and he'd be like, how much further? And eventually he learned, and I'm going to make up numbers here just because you don't need to know where I live. So let's say we lived at exit 46. So eventually he learned we lived at exit 46. And so he would be like, what exit are we on? And I'd be like, oh, we're on exit 25. And he'd be like, that means we have 21 left to go. And I was like, yeah. And, he was like 3, 4, and he was doing these calculations. And, it'd be like, oh, they're mile markers too. So you'd be like, oh, there's this many miles. So if it's this many miles and it's a minute, you're going 60 miles an hour. So it's a minute, it's going to be that many minutes too. And so we were figuring all this stuff out. And again, he was little and he loved that kind of stuff. We used to have these little bean bag, I think we still have them somewhere, that had letters on them. And we would throw the letters back and forth. And then like I'd throw a B at him and I go, boy, B, boy. And then he'd throw like a D back at me and he'd be like, D, doggy. And so he really loved learning. So then it got to the point where I couldn't keep doing my father's company. It was just not, he wouldn't want me to do it. I wouldn't want to do it. It was not for me. I just did it kind of as didn't want to leave his customers in a lurch type of thing. So I did it for like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, just till I could figure out what I was doing next. And I decided to send my son to school. So we went to the local Catholic school because my local school system is not very good. And and he started preschool first. I said he needs to meet more friends, he needs to do more things, and he had fun. He was kind of an introvert, so his in preschool, his teacher was a little concerned and was like, he's not really. And I'm like, I don't know. He talks to us. I don't know. Pre-K, he started to bloom and, he made all kinds of friends and it was good. And then kindergarten was like, okay, time to like really sit down. And my kid was like, there will be no sitting down. This is not how I roll. And it was a constant fight and he'd crawl away under tables and it was a big mess. And I was constantly in meetings and he had to be evaluated to see if he had any special needs. And they're like, no, the kid's just bored. Like he can do all the work, he can do everything. He's just bored. So they got him on, some sort of, he didn't qualify for IEP because he didn't have any special needs, but he qualified for a 504 because he couldn't handle the sitting and what have you and just wanted to do whatever. And during this time, I went back to my teaching and I found Outschool and I started teaching online again. I started teaching history classes online and I was doing live classes and things were doing well. And then first grade, we had COVID. And I was like, well, I can't be teaching live classes online now because I have my 5, 6, I guess he was 6 by then, 6, 7-year-old at home and I have to be teaching him. And so I was like, okay. And I was looking at the work. I'm like, this is what you're doing? And he was like, yeah. I'm like, oh, pay a lot of money for this to be all you're doing. And I was like, all right, maybe because it's COVID and there's extra stuff. Okay. Second grade was okay. He had a good teacher. We loved his teacher. He still got in trouble a bit and he started having some issues with bullies. And the school did not handle the bully system very well. And so I was in conferences some more. And at one point in time, he had this, oh, I should probably mention his father passed away before first grade. So there was some more acting out issues at that point too. But he had this teddy bear that reminded him of his da, which he called him his da. And some kid grabbed the teddy bear and ran off with it. Just teasing, normal kid stuff. But it freaked my kid out because everybody knew this teddy bear was a significant thing. That's why he was like the one kid allowed to bring a teddy bear to school. And I got a call that was like, oh, he's being disruptive. You have to come and get him. And I'm like, why? What do you do now? And I'm like, wait, so another kid was like teasing him and he's the one getting, and it was all very strange. But like I said, that was like first grade. Second grade was better. And I was like, all right, maybe we're doing this. Maybe this is working. But I started looking at third grade came. Oh my gosh. The work was like, I was like, you have the same basic worksheet every day in math. She's like, yep. I'm like, wow, this is pretty crazy. And then it was like, I don't know, there was a bunch of stuff that was just not, he was bored out of his head and he wouldn't, and I was constantly in meetings with them saying, well, he can do the work, he just doesn't do the work and it's very disruptive. And I'm like, I get it. I don't know what else to do. Like he's bored and there's only so much anybody can do to like make someone do that. I tried taking on electronics, I tried having conversations with him, I tried positive and negative reinforcement. We did everything we could. And I'm like, and finally they said, they said, you have to have him evaluated again. I'm like, well, he sees a therapist because of his father. He's gone through the school system. Like, talk to his pediatrician, see what his pediatrician said. So I said, okay. I went to the pediatrician. And the pediatrician was like, yeah, no, he's bored. Like, I can tell right now, like he needs to keep active. He needs to, whatever. And he's bored. And mind you, the school is a decent school, but there's 25 kids in the class and you go with the slowest kid in the class pace. So there was a lot of like, I'll do that later. No, you can't do it later. You have to do it now. Why? And then he gets set down to the guidance counselor who he loved. He would spend all day down there with her if he could. And she'd be like, okay, you got to do your papers. And he'd be like, okay, bang out like the entire day's worth of work in like 10 minutes. And then be like, all right, so what do you want to talk about? And they're like, this is not what it's for. And he's like, whatever. And so finally the principal, I had we went to the pediatrician. I told him what the pediatrician said. She said, well, then you have to get him evaluated again. And I was like, you got to get him to go to a neuropsychologist. So I said, okay. So I got a number for a neuropsychologist. I came back. I said, there's a long wait. It's not going to be till like August or something. And this was, spring. And she's like, well, you got to find someone that's going to put the kid on drugs. And I was like, or on medication. She said, on medication. And I'm like, why? What? It's like, obviously nothing else is working. You have to find someone will put him on medication. I'm like, but he doesn't need medication. Well, he needs something because he's not. That's when I was like, look, the kid's father died of a drug overdose. The last thing I need to do is say, oh, you're having trouble? Let's go put you on some medication you don't need because it'll make everybody else feel better. No, thank you. So I was like, I'm home. I'm teaching homeschoolers. I taught English as a second language. I'm teaching middle school kids, social studies. I started teaching at my local church. I started teaching faith formation classes. I'm like, I can do this. So I told them, I said, I want to leave the door open in case it's a horrible disaster of homeschooling and he can't manage anything. And, I don't want to send him back to the school systems. And he has friends here. So any school, no school's going to be better about his issues. And they were like, that's fine. And the principal even said, honestly, I think homeschooling is best for him. And I said, so do I. So we brought him home and we did homeschooling this year and it's been amazing. But every single time I get together with either my brother, he's really doesn't understand it. He's like, but you can't teach things like you're not going to be able to excel. And I'm like, there's pods, there's groups, there's online classes, there's all kinds of things. There's books. I'm learning with him. We're good. We're good. He's only in, fourth grade. When we get to high school, if he needs calculus or something that I can't understand, we'll figure that out then. But don't worry about it. And he's like, his kid's in all these extra math classes and all these extra things. And I'm like, he'll be fine. He's already excelling. Like I said, he was bored. We have him take the standardized testings, the same ones that they did at school. And he was always like off the charts with the standardized testings. I'm like, he's doing better than anybody in his school. He's doing better than, I'm like, he'll be fine. Like, it's fine. And even if he wasn't, the personalized attention would probably help him and other things. Like he's really bad at writing. He's really good at answering questions. He's really good at things, but he doesn't even know what a paragraph is. I'm like, how are you in fourth grade and you don't know what a paragraph is? So there are things we need to work on, obviously. And I reevaluate from there. But it amazes me how much pushback there is from society to be like, oh, you shouldn't, how can you, I can't believe you. And it's like, it wasn't that long ago. It was real school for everybody only started like 100 years ago. Like it wasn't that common for people. And even then, it wasn't that common before that for people to have more than like a sixth grade education. I think of like the Clampetts. I'm going to graduate sixth grade. And it's like, that was pretty normal for most of the, even in other parts of the world, there's still not the same push for education. And you say, well, yeah, but those are third world countries and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I'm not saying he can't be educated. He can be educated at home. That's what people did. People knew how to read. They took out their Bible. They learned how to read. They learned, they all ran businesses. Everybody had a own, even if you're a farmer, you knew, oh, I'm growing this much tomatoes this season, but we need some wool from those other people. Let's figure it out. And they figured out their math and their businesses and so much stuff. Like there's this kidropreneur thing. And yes, these are just things I use. They're not like shouts out. They're not advertising. They're not whatever. But it like teaches kids how to run their own businesses. There's all this stuff that's not taught in school. Like I remember when I was a kid, we had home economics classes. And not even like the real ones. Like you look back at the 50s, they taught you how to manage a checkbook. They taught you how to do all this stuff. But when I was a kid, they did like sewing, cooking, wood shop, that kind of thing. And I remember people like, why do we need to do this? We have parents. Parents could of course, my generation, I'm a Gen Xer. Nobody had parents. We were all raised by single parents. They were all exhausted. We got takeout most of the time. And now we're in a generation where everybody gets takeout. Like people complain, and I know, totally side note, but people complain about how like they have no money compared to old generations. It's like, right, because old generations didn't replace $1,000 phone every 2 years. Old generation didn't get takeout coffee 6 times a day. Like it's a very different world. But that's a side note. But anyway, so there's nothing, I mean, I literally have a library at my house of all different kinds of books. We have a town library. We have multiple town libraries around us with different types of activities, different types of things. There's a lot of homeschool groups on Facebook and different things. I've connected with AHEM in our area, which is like a homeschooling thing in Massachusetts, which is where I'm from. And it's like, there's all these groups and he's done everything, taken classes from everything from how to design things with fondant because he loved watching Nailed It on TV to television production classes. And we went, we're right near, we have so much history in Massachusetts. So we've done things in Lexington and Concord. We've done things in the Lowell Textile Museums. We've done things Plymouth Plantation. We have plans to go to like Battleship Cove. all these different places that we could take advantage of. And I saw someone today that was like, the daughter wants to homeschool and the mom's not sure. And I was like, look, she's like, they won't have the socialization, she won't have this. And I said, if you don't want to homeschool, you don't have to homeschool. I'm not telling you to do so. But if you do want to, don't let these things stop you, because there's a gajillion resources out there to help you. I don't know when it became a thing where moms weren't capable of taking, like, we all went through school. We all did this. We all know, even if you're not a teacher, like, yes, I have my degree in history. Okay. But even if I don't, like, I don't have a degree in math, but I can sit down and we use Khan Academy. That's what we use. And we go through and we watch the videos and we do the things, and we have workbooks and we have different things. We have flashcards. We do all the same things you do in school. And, my sister-in-law is a math teacher as well. And so if we need help, we have that resource. Not that we have, but it's like, she's not an ace at math, but she can teach. She has her degree, she has her master's in education, everything else. So they're like, you can do, basic math. She's like, yeah, they give you the book, they give you the curriculum, you just go with it. That's how it is. And she's like, yeah, this is little kid math. Sure, we can do this. Again, when it gets into calculus, you might need some extra help, maybe even more than Khan Academy. Maybe I'll even hire a tutor. I don't know. But the point is I don't know when it became this thing where, like, parents aren't capable of, like, taking care of their own children. I talked about this in another video where it's like, oh, what do which daycare and how do you deal with the daycares? And I'm like, I didn't deal with daycare. Like, he did go to nursery school because I was like, okay, it's time to start school. And it was like half days, couple days a week, that kind of thing, socialization stuff, because it's what I was told. And I was like, you're right, we should do this. And I'm not saying that I wish I didn't send him to the school, because I love the school. I got more involved with the church. And, he made a lot of good friends. I made a lot of good friends. It was good. That's not to say that if I hadn't gone, we were already getting more involved in church type stuff anyway when I got him baptized. So we probably would have gone closer to that anyway. But that's not to say I wouldn't have been. Before that, I was already teaching in different respects. We were already going to library play groups. We're already doing all that kind of stuff. We would have just made different friends. So it's neither here nor there. But just the way people shame homeschoolers, it just amazes me. It's like, oh, they're going to be so, they're going to be so weird. They're not going to know how to talk to people. I'm like, I've seen public school kids. They sit there on their phones, not looking up when you're like having like you're speaking to them. They're still typing into their phones. I don't really see how that's helping with education at all. My kid, someone speaks to them, you better put that thing down. If not, that thing's getting taken away. I'm not saying I never let my kid use electronics. I'm not that person. I'm a single mom. It's tough. But, you still have to teach them respect. And they're more apt to learn that at home with you. And they're more apt to learn your values and your things you think are important. And they're more apt to follow, like I said, he took the fondant class. That's not offered at his school. They did offer some good things. They offered, like, he took ASL for a while and some different things. I'm not saying the school wasn't a good school. But now he can follow whatever interest piques his, and he can try different things. You know how many people don't, when I graduated high school, I went through the curriculum and I just did whatever I was told. And I was lucky. I did have some TV production classes and stuff. So I had a little bit of ideas of things like that, but then it's a different world. There was no YouTube back then. If it was, I would, very different career path. But for most people, they just go through and then they get out and then they get told, okay, you got to pick a major. And you're like, I have never done anything. Homeschoolers get to try everything. They get to do, I remember saying to him, like, you get to do way more. We have, passes to the Museum of Science. We can go whenever we want to. In the middle of a Tuesday, sure, let's go to the Museum of Science. No problem. The stuff that they think they think we're all just holed up in a thing, like working on, I don't know, workbooks or reading book. I don't know what they think we're doing. But there's a lot of things out there. A lot of apps now, a lot of interactive classes, a lot of pods, a lot of places that you can go for hands-on. We did this one field trip with like a Facebook group and at a Lowell museum, and they were literally doing experiments with like water and hydraulics and how different windmills work with different not windmills, water mills work and everything. And he was like, "This is the best field trip I've ever been on." And I was like, "Yeah, this was good." Again, met some kids, went to another one, and they were doing like three-legged races with the kids, and they were having a whole bunch of fun. I was like, "Yeah, yeah, sure. There's no socialization here. Don't know what you're talking about." So my point is if you want to homeschool, there are a million great resources out there. If you don't want to homeschool, that's fine too. But don't insult people, don't degrade people, and don't bash people because they choose to spend their time with their children and hang out with their children and teach their children the way they want to be taught. All right. Again, like, subscribe, whatever it is that people say. I mostly do this to blog for myself. Anyway, bye.